Anna Wilding, and welcome to another episode. Today, I am honored to announce that I have sitting here with me former President of Mauritius until 2018 and biodiversity expert, President Ameenah Gurib-Fakim. President Fakim, welcome. I wish it was under better circumstances that I had you with me today.
No worries. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Okay, so just to brief viewers, because a lot of people don't know yet in the United States this has happened. Wakashio is one of the largest shipping vessels in the world. I think the size of a large aircraft carrier ran aground on the beautiful and iconic island of Mauritius 3 weeks ago, carrying 4,000 tons of oil. The ship is owned by the Wakashio shipping company, and it ran aground into a marine park which is home to endemic and indigenous species, 1,700 in fact, including 800 types of fish, 17 kinds of marine animals, and 2 species of turtles. And in fact, there's even species in the lagoon that have not even been fully discovered yet. President Fakim, please talk us through what has happened with the oil spill to date and why it's so important we must protect ecosystems like this, and what damage has occurred so far.
Thank you so much. Again, thank you for having me and telling the story of the spill. The ship, as you have rightly said, ran aground on the 25th of July. And nothing was heard until the evening of the 6th of August, when we started hearing that there was an oil spill precisely in the marine park, which is an area not very far from the airport. Now, again, it's worth pointing out that this spill couldn't have come at a worse time as we emerge from the COVID, because the country has been on lockdown till June of this year, and we started gradually to open up. And it has impacted our beaches, it has impacted our tourism industry, because the tourism industry brings in about 24% of our GDP and employs so many in the informal sector. So this is a sector which has been very badly impacted. Now, having said this, these are recuperable losses because jobs are lost, jobs are created. But what we don't know is what damage it has done to this marine park, because we are one of the most biodiverse regions in the world. We constitute, along with the islands in the surrounding Indian Ocean around us, one of the biodiversity hotspots in the world. And there are species which we discover, often, and this species adds to the body of knowledge, of course, body of information to science. So we don't know what we are losing, and we know what we are losing because we have seen the damage that this oil spill has done. And I think in everybody's imaginary, whenever there's an oil spill, we can see these birds drenched in oil and the fish. And of course, here we have mangrove swamps and the aerial roots. They're all totally covered up with thick sludge. So it is not a pretty sight, and we have lost, at least for a good few years, one of the best beaches in this country.
So what is happening with the cleanup? Presumably no port of Mauritius was designed to harbour a vessel of this size. How has that impacted local authorities? How has it impacted the local population? And broadening out from that, what countries have rushed in with aid or to help clean up the oil spill to date so far? And how much oil has actually spilled so far from that 4,000 tons on board?
Well, we don't know exactly how much oil has gone, but we know from the estimate there are thousands of tons which have gone in. Now, interestingly, as you have said in the introduction, this ship is among the 1% of the largest ships that have been built. And it is big enough, as you have said, to house to an aircraft carrier. And it was not meant to be near our borders, because the ship was destined to go via the Cape of Good Hope, South Africa, on the way to Brazil. And presumably they have asked for this innocent passage, because most of the ships they ask permission to actually go through our waters. And he was traveling at a constant speed and almost on a straight line when he hit the coral reef. And the spill has been there, and we are trained. We do all the routine simulation for oil spill, But I think no one, because we've had other ships which have wrecked on our reef before. We've had precisely at this very same spot in 2016, but this oil has been contained. There was no spill at all. And in 2011, the same thing. We did not get any spill whatsoever. It's the first time that we're seeing this. And once the oil started spilling out, I mean, the islanders and all of us, we were totally, kind of taken aback with the size of this disaster. Now, we've made a rallying call, and we've had immediately France, which has a department just outside, just very, very near Mauritius. They have sent in experts, and we've had experts coming and material also from India. And of course, Japanese have also sent their expert. But we're making a call here for scientists, for other resource persons, for experts to come and give us a hand. Why I'm saying this is because this fuel, which has run aground, is a fuel which is fairly new to the business. It's a low sulfur fuel, and we still do not know the impact of this fuel in the warmer Indian Ocean, in the Indian Ocean waters. So this is not crude oil. It's a different kind of fuel, and scientists will tell you that the degradation of the chemical components will result in getting more more of this finer chemical which will land in the water, which will still remain there for a long time, and this is going to cause a lot of harm to the marine wildlife. And not very far from this site is the nesting ground for the whales. And we get, of course, lots of dolphins in our waters. So what we do not know and we cannot assess, because it's still early days, we are still grappling with the sludge. But once the bigger sludge has been removed, we will have to grapple with the very, very smaller, finer pollution. And that will take a long, long time to disappear. But already scientists are noticing a high level of arsenic in some of the local fish. So, and who says fishing means impacting livelihoods of so many of these fisher folks who operate precisely on this. So when I met them on that Friday, 7th of August, I could see terror in their eyes. I could see them totally at a loss because their livelihoods is eroding in front of their very eyes.
Right. So you need the scientists there. You need to establish whether the damage is going to be irreparable, whether it's ever going to come back to life. The mangrove swamps are destroyed. You're looking for scientists from around the world to come and research and spend 6 months or a year on the island to ascertain exactly how this particular kind of oil is going to break down and affect the environment over periods of years or long-term or permanently.
That's right. We need to collect the data so that we can really make a proper assessment, and not just on the marine life, plant and of course animal, but also the impact of human lives, because it has come very, very close to our shores. Right. So we need to do the assessment. And of course, we need to build a case for claims because somebody has to pay.
I was just going to say the Nagashiko Shipping Company. I noticed they've issued a couple of press releases where they say they're going to do all they can. Is that actually happening in reality? Do you know if compensation amounts are being discussed? Do you know how long, whether it will go through a legal process or whether it's going to be a fairly quick settlement? Obviously, the lives of fishermen and the locals are completely impacted. What's the progress with the status of that so far?
Well, tomorrow will be 1 month since the whole the ship ran aground, and I think it's still early days. I'm sure they're still busy discussing. But having said this, the damage is here, and what we have to be ready with is a full dossier, not beyond the reparation in terms of financial term, but I think what we have in terms of priority is to look at the damage that has been caused to the wildlife. Because as I've just mentioned, we are a biodiversity hotspot. We have been known to the world for having, made the dodo, the flightless bird, disappear. But we are also an example of, having a poster child for conservation. And unfortunately, the oil spill has happened precisely at that very spot where the 20 years of conservation effort may be wiped off because of this oil spill. And this is something that, is totally priceless, and no amount of money can bring these birds. And these, some of the birds there's only 40 of them left in the world. So this is something that we are tackling with, and there is urgency there.
So one of the questions, of course, is how did this happen? As you mentioned before, it seems that there was a direct straight line. Now, I know the captain has said that he was making maneuverings to get close to land, perhaps to get Wi-Fi signal or something. We don't know the truth of that, but the satellite images do show a direct collision course. And that raises the question in terms of transportation security, whether in the air, in planes or large shipping vessels, as how can a single point of command result in such catastrophic damage? And haven't efforts already been taken throughout the world and with the International Marine Organization to stop these single point of chains of commands where these kind of damages can occur? I noticed that the vehicle was registered in Panama. Do you know much about the conflicts between the IMO, International Marine Organization, and Panama, whether that has called into further questioning of what safety issues are set for large vessels operating around the world?
Interesting that you have said that the ship precisely has been registered in Panama, and I'm now reading a lot about all these issues around the ship, of course, and the ship has never visited Panama ever in its 13 years of existence. Now it's flying precisely the Panama flag, but I think we call for a bigger question. First of all, the role of regulatory bodies. You have rightly mentioned the IMO, and we are looking at ships which are with single hulk, carrying so much of this fuel. If I said if there had been a double hulk, we might not have seen the damage. And it begs the question as well as to what extent the shipping industry is responding to this. Now, I'll just take another very far away example. When they had this crash from the German wing plane, they had to put the blame on the pilot, but immediately after this we saw big changes in the aviation industry. Now, can we put the blame only on the captain? As you have rightly said, it is too much to put on the shoulders of just one captain. There are too many questions. We need to have the answers, because this kind of wreckage cannot keep on happening around small island states. Now, you had asked a question before, I didn't answer that. We are about less than 30 countries which make up the small island developing states. Now, these small island developing states, they are home to some of the most diverse ecosystems. Now, one can beg the question, why should we be protecting this very biodiverse ecosystem? Now, increasingly, we are seeing that, especially in the context of climate change, why we need, and the fires we've had in Australia, and of course the fires we've had in Brazil, why we need to keep on protecting this, because a very diverse, it makes the ecosystem more resilient, and it ensures our survival on this planet. And we depend on it for water, we depend on it for food, for the oxygen we breathe, for the medicines we take, and for the food we have. So this is the basic fundamental as to why we need to keep on protecting it, because a more diverse ecosystem and habitat is, the more resilient it becomes, and the more resilience means, of course, our survival on this planet. But I think this is something which is taking a long time to be driven into the mindset and into, of course, in the mind of policymakers and politicians. They don't seem to see the long-term benefits of this ecosystem. They perhaps see the short term. And unfortunately, the short-termism is not going to help us.
And that was the question I had about policy and government organizations and parties, and the fact that the extent of their support, and also, I guess, investigating the culpability in this kind of situation, and whether it should be greater than just the organizations themselves. And also it thrusts island nations into the situation where you're relying on NGOs, non-profits, non-government organizations, and the will of their donors to fix major oil spills that are actually a direct result of the policies that were made by various organizations. And I think it is an area that does need to progress further forward, I think, obviously. And does this put you in a position now where you're basically lobbying around the world to get attention to your island nation? And you are probably going to have to rely on the goodwill of donors and marine organizations, NGOs. Are you getting enough support from governments around the world at this point?
Well, we are getting support from the surrounding countries. We belong to a few blocs like the Indian Ocean Commission. We have France, of course, through the Department Overseas, which is Réunion Island, which is helping us. We are hoping, of course, to be rallying other blocs which belong to, for example, the African Union. But I think beyond this, we'll need to get the world's attention, and we need to get the attention of the best institutions so that we can do a full assessment of the current disaster. And the thing is that while we're grappling with this oil spill, as I said, the cleaning up will not be just in a few months' time. It will be in a few years, because we know how these particles remain, of course, in the waters. And now we're seeing something interesting. What is happening in Antarctica, we get it here. And what's happening in Wuhan, we see it happen we see the impact in Americas, we see the impact in Europe. So I think we are relying on the fact that we have to put the message across to the world that there is an interconnectedness with everything that happens anywhere, any place in the world. It can impact all of us. So I think this is the message that we have to drive home, and it's already going to impact our whales and our turtles. And of course, their species migrate. So there are species which migrate, there are species which will be eaten elsewhere in the world. So it's in our own common interest, so that we all put our heads together and also our resources together, and so that we can come up with a solution fast, because I stress on the word, we are living in a highly interconnected world.
Yes, we are. And I just have one quick question about Mauritius's tourism, which was a large part of its GDP. Are tourists still welcome?
Yes, tourists are welcome. It's only one part which has been damaged, at least temporarily. We are going to do our effort to get things up and running again. But of course, over 80% of the country is still there, and we are hoping the airspace gets open, fairly quickly, so that we can start welcoming people, because there's so much that Mauritius has to offer to the world. Albeit we are very small, but we have tremendous welcoming power, and we can help, of course, make the stay very pleasant. So we call on them to trust us. We'll do everything to make the stay comfortable.
Do you think the nation will impose a visitor's tax to help with the oil spill?
No, well, it's too early days to tell, but I think it should be more voluntary and contributory as opposed to imposed.
President Fakim, thank you very much for your time today. I hope that you gather all the scientists you need from around the world, and I hope the data can be forthcoming. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much for coming.